Hi, I'm gonna try not to perform, and I think I'm just gonna speak from the heart and just connect with myself and the people who are watching. But hi, my name is Wane, and I just graduated with my major in film studies and video production, and I kind of want to discuss and talk about what I think what I think it personally means to be an artist and even just my journey with creativity like in general. So, for a long time I love the arts. I love creating things. I love making stories, especially when I was younger. I would write before I even knew what fan fiction was, like I wrote fan fiction about like this book. It was like this cheerleader book that I was reading when I was in the second grade or something. And I like made an entire little pamphlet and book about like the series or whatever and just wrote other characters and put my own twist to it. I vaguely remember what was going on, but I kind of feel like that was one of the sheer moments like in my childhood where like I wanted to be creative. I would take tons and tons and tons and tons of like paper, and I would staple them all together like and fold it like it's a book, and I would just like color the characters in, and that's what I would kind of do. And that's kind of like, I don't want to say where it started, but I think it's just what it's where it started to where I wanted like to write more often, and I didn't realize I wanted to write as much. But I would say my first love, if anything, is I would personally say it's music. For me, music has always been an escape for me, and like I feel like it was catharsis anyway. I think writing was more of an escape, of like a mental and emotional escape, and then music, I think, eventually became my escape as I became older, and I loved singing. I think singing was one of the first things that I did when I was younger. I couldn't talk or like speak until like I was 5. I had to go to like speech therapy for it, and when I did sing, like I sang all the time, and I think it started like when I was in church, like when I was younger, and everything, and you know, I would just every single time I would just sing like hymns and like music like in between or like after the gospel, or I didn't truly understand what was going on at the time, but the one thing that I did know is that I wanted to sing and I liked music, and it was a language that I felt really that I understood the most. In a world where I felt like an outsider, especially in ways where I couldn't talk at the time, notes and like melodies and harmonies and pitches were like that for me. Singing, even I was singing even before I even knew what I was singing about, you know? And that's kind of where it started. At the age of 9 or 10, I played an instrument for the first time, and it was a violin in an orchestra. And despite me only being in the orchestra for like 1 year, I definitely enjoyed it, and I actually wish I continued playing an instrument, because I think an instrument was one of those things where it's like it was one of those like first times where like I took a structured class to learn something creative, and I love instruments. And like I play the violin, and that's what I remember. But then in the 5th grade, like, I couldn't, because like my mom and dad, like my parents couldn't afford it at the time. So a year later after that, I decided that I really wanted to be in a choir, and they were sending out like applications and everything when I moved to like a different place. I think near the end, like the second half of like my like year when I was 11, right before like middle school and everything, and I decided I wanted to sing. Like let's be in a choir, let's like sing, like it was for free, like you had to pay like for again to play an instrument and whatnot. And when it was choir, it was like it's for free. You just bring your voice. So that's what I could potentially like afford, or my parents could. And that was one of the first times when I was 11. That was one of the first times that I was singing, like I wouldn't say professionally, but singing like in a structured like manner. I would say singing professionally, like technically, like in a structured taught setting, right? Like it wasn't self-taught or anything. Like I learned the very much the fundamental basics of like creativity and everything. And I really enjoyed learning about like solfege, like music theory. Like I was obsessed with it, and I was really good at what I was doing, like, and that says a lot because I didn't play piano, like, because usually there's some people in choir or who sing and they know and they play instruments before they even sing, or they do it while they sing and they learn about music theory and they pick it up because of the instruments that they've played. I think it does help because I did play an instrument before I was in a class and I sang in a community like social academic setting. So it kind of works. I knew the notes. And then that was up until my freshman year of high school. And the reason why I wasn't able to continue to sing and be taught it like personally by an instructor and instructed was because again, like, my parents were working a lot, so it was a major sacrifice on them, so I had to like cut off like being in a choir. So I didn't get to sing in a choir like up until my first college year. I like to be in a choir or be in like a music group setting. And I'm not gonna lie, I do think it kind of affected how I remember and sing. I feel like my music theory knowledge is a little and terminology is a little bit limited because of it, and it devastates me a lot. Like I do remember a lot of fundamentals to singing, and I always keep it in the back of my mind. I know about all the notes and the accidentals, of course, but there was other choir lingo that I learned, right? And I just feel a bit sad. I kind of mourn my inner teenager a little bit and my inner child because a part of me just loves to learn, and there's a part of me that had to sacrifice me learning in order because it just wasn't in the works. There wasn't much time, and I was younger, and I had to work around my parents' schedules because of it, because they were always working and busy, and there was a time commitment with choir, even though I enjoyed it. So then first year of college, or first semester really, until I took like a gap semester afterwards, because my mental health wasn't the greatest. But I did take a choir class, but unfortunately I didn't enjoy it as much because um, I think I just realized I didn't want to be a choir at that point, but I wanted to be in a singing group and I still wanted to sing. And I just felt like I think I just got reminded of the rigidity and how uptight some choir and music teachers can be. I'm not trying to generalize all choir and music teachers, I promise. I'm just saying it just was not for me. And I felt like it was very rigid at times, and I felt like I had to mold myself as a musician and a singer. So I'm like, okay, I cannot do this. And then after my gap semester, when I transferred to a new school, I went to an a cappella group. I went into there were like multiple. I auditioned for multiple a cappella groups, and then I got called back for like all of them. There were like three a cappella groups, and there was one a cappella group that I actually did want to be in because it seemed more advanced, and I feel like it would have been a challenge for me to be in it, but I think I messed up my own callback audition anyway, so it was messy. However, there was one group that I was in, and it was basically an all like women's and like non men like type of group. It was you know And that's the group that I was in, and it was a non-competitive group. And I think for me, I think I was disappointed because I wanted to be in the competitive a cappella group. I feel like it would have challenged me, and I think it would have been a cool environment. But then I realized, like, again, I messed up the audition, so obviously I'm not going to be in that group, of course, because I messed it up. But yeah, the people in one of the a cappella groups that was competitive, actually, there are actually a few shitty people in that group, and I know your names and I remember you. Yeah. Some of them were very microaggressive and racist, and I actually tried reporting them twice. So yeah, just so you know, I remember who you are. As I was saying, after I was in that non-competitive acapella group, I just felt like it wasn't for me, and there was a bit of trauma there, and I just felt like mentally, when you're in a room with a bunch of music kids, and like music students, and it could be messy, like, like, it's the arts, like, you know what I mean. Sometimes you're gonna have some drama, sometimes you're gonna have this and this and this, and I'm not like that whatsoever. So I'm like, and also on top of that, I was also not mentally doing well even during that period in that school that I transferred to again. So I decided to leave the group so I could have more time to commit to my academic, like, endeavors afterwards. So, it worked for the better, I guess. Also, I wanted to add one more thing, and is that I joined a gospel choir after the a cappella group from the non-a cappella group from the second school that I attended, and it was one of the best groups and music experiences that I've ever had. Voices of Praise, love you. It was a very nice environment, and gospel choir, and it was just nice just being in harmony, and just it felt very organic. I want to say thank you to the gospel choir, because you saved me, for real. Angel, I love you. If you're out there, I hope you're doing well. So yeah, I just had to say that. And then I finally transferred to the last school that I graduated from, and it was a lot more chill. It was a community college, and I think it was a pretty chill environment for me, and it made me realize that it was the environment that I needed. And if it wasn't an art school, because I did want to go to an art school, I forgot to mention that, but I did want to go to an art school. This was a very good option, and the community college they actually had personalized majors and areas of study that you could actually do. With the private liberal arts colleges, they didn't have any of those, and it felt like I was pulling at strings, because the second school with the first a cappella group that I was in, that school was the school that I chose to go to and apply to, because I thought that they had a strong media area of study, but they really didn't. And you couldn't really take a film personalized class until the second half of your time there. So the third to last year, you had to take it. Like, and that was not for me. Like, if I wanted to work on a personalized thing like film and like screenwriting, literally when I took film and screenwriting classes, and even the editing class, right, I learned all of those things literally a semester and a half into my transfer, when I transferred to this community college. So easy. I wouldn't have wasted as much time if I just went to that college first, and then potentially I could have went to an art school if I was able to. But everything works out in its way, and I'm very grateful, and I'm glad that I came back to this community college, and I'm glad that I found my way in terms of actually being able to study film, like, unlike the other schools. And that's kind of my journey of the arts. But also, like, and speaking of music, I went to audition for like a few music groups that I went in, and I hated them. I didn't get into a group, and an a cappella group, I think. And I was really anxious about it because it just seemed to me that the people were trying to be intimidating when I was auditioning for them. It's always some like uptight music incel or uptight like white girl that I've had to deal with. I've had to deal with that multiple times with some people, like just snippy people in the area that I'm around, and the region that I'm around. It's not great. Being a black person in suburbia is hell. The bar is in hell. Anyways, I really do think that for me personally, I think that I learned from those experiences. But I will say, I do think, now that I think about it, it kind of has negatively affected how I interact with social settings and groups when it comes to creativity and the arts. And it really devastates me. Speaking of theater, let's talk about musical theater. I love theater. The first musical that I was a part of was like in the 8th grade, and I loved it. It was The Little Mermaid, and I didn't have a special role at all. I was like the ensemble, and I was fine with that. Like I liked the socializing of, people and my peers around me, and I didn't mind it. I liked it, and I'm glad that I did because it's like, oh, like I really like theater. Like, and I don't care to be the main character of things or like the main role, even though it would be nice if I was a main role. I don't care. I just care for community and bonding with other people. And I liked the theater space. You know what I mean? But then in high school, I wasn't in the beginning of freshman year. I auditioned for a few things, like many things, and I didn't get into them as usual. There's usually a hierarchical like type of thing, especially with my high school, like in the theater, like they won't choose people like unless like they're a junior or senior, and then maybe they'll choose someone who's a sophomore like every now and then. Like there was no way that I was gonna get a role in anything, and it made me kind of hopeless, I'm not gonna lie, and kind of scared to audition for things. But also I wanted to audition for more things, and I wanted to be a part of more musicals and plays. But again, like as I mentioned earlier, the reason again that I had to drop my choir class was because it was a time commitment, and school and academics were like a main thing like in my family. I lived in a pretty strict environment. I had a bit of helicopter strict parents, but they just wanted me to study and get my studies and, have that and whatnot. But it's just something that I think about every now and then. Sometimes I feel like I mourn the person who I wanted to be during my teenage years and my formative years in general, because I felt like it would have been an easy way for me to put myself out there. However, that being said, I attended poetry clubs. I really really liked like writing poetry. I feel like I've written poetry for a while. I think I was a very creative kid. But I do remember in elementary school, I'm going off of tangents, so you're just gonna have to deal with that. And I loved like drawing and like painting when I was younger. And I think were one of the few interactions that I've ever really had with like arts and artistic things, like learning about art history. And like I think that's why it's so important to integrate art classes and the arts and respect the arts and the art department, and especially teach kids when they are younger, because it gives them a free reign to be expressive. Art is expression, you know what I'm saying? And that was kind of how it was when I was younger. And I learned about like haikus. I learned about like or haikus, I mean. When I say haiku. But no, I learned about like all types of poetry, and like spoken word and writing is one of my favorite forms of writing ever. I would have tons of creative blockages though. Like I took like some creative writing classes, like it was very mundane, you know? And yeah, that's what I would say that I feel like that's my personal experience on creativity. Now, I do want to talk about and discuss kind of like my overall relationship with my overall relationship with creating. and being a creator, like in general. I feel like I definitely struggle with perfectionism, and I feel like I let my limitations hold me back too much, and I don't know how to commit to myself. And I feel like it shows in my creative hobbies and passions, because I feel like I would start a lot of projects, but I wouldn't continue them. And I feel like it's my lack of commitment. And sometimes recently it's gone to the point I haven't even written anything at all. Like anything apart from like a class that I had, or projects like from my like production classes. Like I don't recall one script that I wrote and even like started on my own free time. And I feel like it just taught me that I feel like it's almost like I'm making arts an obligation, and it shouldn't be. I feel like it should be a form of expression to me. But I will say I feel like I shouldn't be as hard on myself, you know? And it's hard to not be hard on yourself, especially when it feels like you were criticized for your art, or you were criticized if you were someone who was criticized a lot, and you get a lot of criticism for anything that you do. And I'm learning that it's okay to just be free flowing. And yeah. Real talk though, I think I'm gonna trauma dump a little bit. Yeah, if you don't mind me. But as a kid, I really struggled to make friends. I really struggled to be a part of a community and find community. I always knew that I was special. You know what I'm saying? Like, there was something in me that was unique and different in the best way possible, and I knew that I was a shit. Period. I knew that I was a shit. But a part of it I feel like was naivety, and a part of me has felt like I people pleased a lot of my life without even realizing that I was. I wasn't as aware like at the time when I was younger, to be honest. Like I think it was just like I think it was very subconscious. And now that I'm hyper aware of things, like I think I might have done things for people when I was younger. I wanted people to like me. I wanted to be accepted. And even though at the time that I felt confident in myself and I liked myself, I wanted other people to see it, which is shouldn't really be the case, because you only have yourself at the end of the day. And I think as I get older and as I learn, there's definitely a rut in my creativity and even in my will to live sometimes. And I think that happened, like, I think ever since my, like, father, like, my dad, like, passed away last year. I think I've been thinking a lot about existentialism, and I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like life is what you make of it. And I feel like, I think as someone who was sheltered a lot as a kid and grew up in a very religious household and a sheltered environment, and dare I say dysfunctional, there is a part of me that felt like I had to wait for people's permission. There was a part of me that felt like I couldn't do things on my own, even though I wanted to do things on my own. If anything, I think when I was younger, I was fighting for my independence, and I still do. Like, I want my independence. I like being independent. I really appreciate, I really appreciate my finding my way in things and doing what I want and doing things for myself, because I feel like when I was younger, I feel like I wasn't allowed to do things for myself. I had to wait for other people to do things for me and to get people's permission. And I think that's where the people pleasing idea comes from. You know what I'm saying? And I just feel like when it comes to my creativity, sometimes it's hard to get inspiration to write or create, because it's like you haven't experienced anything. When you're a sheltered kid, when you have lived in a box your entire life, a metaphorical box, it's hard to gain inspiration because you feel like there's a time where I couldn't even write dialogue as much, really, because I didn't know what people would talk about. I don't know what people would say. I was pretty introverted, and again, like I feel like there's a time where my dialogue was just like, it just felt forced. It felt like a bit amateur because it's like, what am I supposed to say in this conversation? Like, what am I supposed to do? You know? And I feel like that's what made it hard as a writer, is like not, I feel like it was not, I feel like I didn't know what to do. I feel like when it came to relationships and dynamics, I didn't know what they were because I've never had long lasting relationships like in my life. So there was a part of me that felt like, oh, lonely and felt like hopeless in what I had to say because I feel like what I said couldn't be said at all. And I still struggle with isolation. Isolation. I still struggle with a lot of it. And there was a part of me that still feels alone inside and depressed and like just in bed all day, barely eating, you know. Or like eating full meals. Like my emotions are over. I'm so overwhelmed right now. I'm trying to think of the right words, but I think I'm feeling a bit clouded, but I just feel like I don't know what to do. And I would say that's my relationship. I would say with my creativity is like I have so many ideas. And the ideas that run in my head, I would maladaptive daydream as a kid. And I still do it now. I've been doing it my entire life because I think the reason why I maladaptive daydreamed a lot of the time was because, again, as I mentioned earlier, I didn't have the physical space to, or the freedom to go out and build relationships with people and to build connections and to do what I want because I was restricted all the time. So I felt like my mind had to be my sanctuary instead of anything else, like my mind was my escape and my mind was my sanctuary and my mind was my joy because when I was out of my mind and out of my escapism, I would constantly be exposed to restriction and just isolation and hatred at times. And there was a constant yearning to be free. And I feel like I didn't really have that freedom or autonomy to really be myself or express myself in the way that I wanted. And it's still things that I think about. And I feel like I didn't have a childhood sometimes. I feel like I didn't even with my adulthood, I don't think there's an adulthood, like, I guess, like, everything just came back. And there's a part of me that I feel like I have a bit of arrested development. Not in a malicious or insulting way, but more of like, okay, I literally was not allowed to develop the way that I should have. And now I feel like I'm behind in everything. And I'm not behind, but I think no one really talks about the trauma aspect of being in a sheltered environment, which might be something that I might talk about in a different video. But this is why I wanted to speak out about, my relationship with creativity, because in the nearing future, I definitely plan on creating a lot of like works and like movies and music and shows and whatnot, and just being alive. I think just being alive in this time in the future, because that's what my account is going to be dedicated to. I'm learning to be kinder to myself. I don't know how to be kinder to myself. I've tried reading The Artist's Way, and I think I might try to read The Artist's Way. Thank you for listening if you stuck by to listen. This might not even reach anybody, but honestly, it could be for myself. It could be for me. So I'm going to try not to be anxious. I'm trying to learn to be okay with being perceived and not be anxious about being perceived. If people don't want to perceive, they don't want to perceive me. Sometimes a part of me is like, I don't want to be perceived, but it's like, I should be perceived by myself, and perceiving is just noticing someone. It's seeing you. It's being seen. There will be eyes because obviously it's public, but it's like, I'm just going to put myself out there. That's really all I have to say. So, bye.